Hey guys, how are we doing? Welcome to the weekly roundup. It is Friday, June 21st, 2024, and another big week in boxing, especially here in Australia. And of course, if you're an Australian, Liam Paro, the word or the name on everyone's lips this week. He won the IBF 140-pound title over Subriel Matias. That was in Puerto Rico. So Liam improved to 25-0. Matias dropped to 20-2. I've gone on about this a lot on the shows this week in various forms, not just on my own shows, but other shows I've been on as well. And what more can you say about Liam Paro? Went to the Lions Den in Manatee, Puerto Rico. It was all stacked against him over there, but like a lot of Aussies have done before, he really rose to the occasion and beat the boogeyman, as they say, I'll spit that out, Subriel Matias, for that IBF belt. So it's an interesting one to see where Liam goes from here. There was talk that maybe Devin Haney could be thrown up as a potential opponent for October. Eddie Hearn is looking to get Liam Paro back to Australia for that homecoming in October. But the events of what's happened with Ryan Garcia, which I'll get to in a minute, has really sort of thrown that into disarray a little bit, because Devin Haney has actually announced that, well, when I say announced, he's put it on his social media or whatever it was, might have been a statement, I can't remember, but he has actually stated that he will take a 12-month break from the sport of boxing, and I suppose he can do it because he is young enough. I think he's only 25, 24, 25, so he's still a young man and has been pretty active in his career. So I don't think it's the end of the world for him. But Eddie Hearn did put up his name as being possible for October to unify the WBC and IBF belts. He also did actually, on the other hand, Devin Haney was thrown up by Bob Arum as being a potential unification opponent for Teofimo Lopez as well for that WBO and WBC belt. So there's a few options for Haney. Be interesting to see how he comes out of all this with the Ryan Garcia situation. As I said, we'll get to that in a sec. But for Liam Paro, I'm not quite sure what's next for him apart from being in the running to come back to Australia in October. I'm probably thinking a fight with the likes of Regis Prograis or maybe Rolly Ramiro might be on the table for Liam. Still pretty tough fights for him, of course, but I don't think there is the possibility of the unification fights, especially now that Devin Haney said he will take a year out. Isaac Cruz has a fight scheduled. Teofimo Lopez has a fight scheduled. And it's going to be pretty tough to get that unification this year, but you never know. But the main thing is for Liam, he's got that IBF belt. He can pretty much do what he wants now. He's going to be in demand. He's going to get some big fights, some big paydays, and he fully deserves it. And not just for Liam, I'd like to acknowledge Alfie DiCarlo, his long-time coach in the corner, and the team as a whole, including promoter Anjo DiCarlo, did a fantastic job in getting Liam Paro to that position. Of course, Liam Paro's got to get in there and finish it off, and it was quite daunting for him. It was a very loud crowd. Obviously, Matias is a pretty feared and avoided fighter. To go over there to Puerto Rico and put on the performance he did was just was magnificent. And congratulations again to Liam Paro. Still on the Australian scene, the Premier Boxing Series, the 5th instalment, took place on Wednesday night in Melbourne at the Melbourne Pavilion, promoted by Team Alice Events. And in the main event, Mitch Leake improved to 11-0 with a 10-round decision over Jack Brubaker, who fell to 18-6-2. That was for the Australian middleweight title. So congratulations to Mitch Leake in his first headlining show on the Premier Boxing Series platform. On the undercard, not necessarily the result was a surprise, but it was the way he went about it. Lucas Miller with a first round knockout of Matt Sheehan for the Australian light heavyweight title. Lucas Miller improved to 12-6-2 and was pretty much known as a bit of a journeyman in these last sort of couple of years. But with this win, who knows where that might propel him. But Matt Sheehan dropped to 10-3, and interestingly enough, all 3 of those losses have been by first-round knockout. His second consecutive first-round knockout. So I'm not quite sure where that leaves Matt Sheehan. He's a good young guy. I have promoted him a couple of times, and let's hope he makes the right call for his career. And also on the card, in the other main fight on that card, Clay Smith, the Premiership player from the Western Bulldogs from 2016. He improved to 3-0 with a first-round knockout of Jamie Phillips, who dropped to 1-3. And the other fight on that card, if you really wanted to know, it's another football fight. It was Stephen Baker, the ex-St Kilda grand final player. He fought, I was just going to say played, he fought former Collingwood grand final player, Brodie Holland, and won a 3-round decision. Now, one thing on that, it was a 2-minute round fight. Now, I did say during the watch-along on the night that I understand that these are novice boxers and they're football players, all the rest of it. But if you're going to make a pro debut or have a pro fight, at least make it a 3-minute round fight. I know they're not up to fighting the 6, 8, 10, 12 rounds, whatever it might be. But 3 2-minute rounds, that's something that 12 and 13-year-old kids do in the amateurs, not what pros do. Even if they've never had a fight before, the normal protocol, no matter what experience level you have, is a 4 by 3-minute round. So to all the footy players out there, if you're going to come into our sport, at least try and not just pretend you're a fighter, but act like a proper fighter and fight 4 3-minute rounds. And another couple of things that have come to hand as well. Isaac Hardman is now a free agent, the head splitter. So he signed with No Limit a couple of years ago. He was with D&L Events. The D&L promotions or events company looks like it might not be any longer. I'm not quite sure the exact situation with them, but long story short, Isaac Hardman did part ways with them a couple of years ago, signed with No Limit, has had some fights with them. He's lost to Rowan Murdoch, and the last opponent, who his name escapes me. It is Friday. It's been a long week. But so he has now decided to go out on his loan, and he did make a point in thanking No Limit for releasing him from his contract, so obviously it's amicable. Not quite sure why Isaac Hardman would do this. Now, No Limit have been actually quite good for him, in my opinion. They've given him some big fights on some big cards. Had the big fight on his standalone card in his last outing. So, like Paulo Acuso before him, I'm not quite sure what the better alternative is. Now, Isaac was also, I'm pretty sure, aligned with Tasman Fighters as well, apart from D&L. So I'm not quite sure where he goes to now. There's no other promoters out there. Well, there's not really anyone in Australia apart from pretty much Tasman and No Limit, in my opinion. Maybe there's Ace Boxing, but who more seem to get them to a point and then hand them off to the bigger promoters. And obviously now Angelo DiCarlo a step back as well. So unless there's something more into it, I just don't see the sense in Isaac Hardman splitting from No Limit, but I'm sure there is a good reason for that. The main thing is, I think he just wants to explore different scenarios and maybe get out. Maybe it's to go overseas and maybe put himself out there to fight some of the bigger names on the bigger cards over there. But I think, judging by his last fight, I think it did show that Isaac probably has a way to go in getting to that world level. So look, I wish him well as one of my favourite Australian fighters, but again, not quite sure why you would split with the biggest promoters in Australia after distancing. It's one of those days, isn't it? Yourself from the second and third biggest promoters as well in the country. So best of luck to Isaac, whatever he decides he's going to do. And one thing that was a little bit disturbing that has turned out to be or a good news story is that Howard Lee, the icon ring announcer from Victoria, he's announced many of the big fights over the years, including Lester Ellis, Barry Michael, Graham Brook, all the big names over the years, and former Herald Sun reporter as well, was incorrectly announced as deceased. That was actually on Wednesday night. Thankfully, those reports were wrong. So Howard Lee, one of the absolute legends of the Australian boxing scene, but also Australian media in general. So that was incorrectly announced. So all the best to Howard Lee, a true legend of this country in not just boxing, but football and other sports as well. All right, let's get on to the world scene. And last weekend, it was all about one fighter, apart from Liam Paro and Subriel Matias, of course, but Gervonta Davis retained that WBA lightweight title with an 8th-round knockout of Frank Martin. That was in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand. Davis improved to 30-0. Frank Martin dropped to 18-1. Also on that card, David Benavidez improved to 29-0. with a 12-round decision over Alexander Gvozdyk, who dropped to 20-2. That was for the interim WBC 175-pound title. The other fights on the undercard, the other world title fights, Gary Russell dropped to 17-1 and lost that interim WBC 140-pound title with a 12-round decision loss to Alberto Puello, 23-0. The scores there, 118, 109, 115, 112, and 114, 113. Just to go back a little bit, Benavides with that win over Gvozdyk, the scores were 119, 109, 117, 111, and 116, 112. And the other fight on the undercard for the WBC 160-pound title, Carlos Adames improved to 24-1 with a 12-round decision over Terrell Gausha, who dropped to 24-4-1. The scores there, 119, 109, and 118, 110 times 2. Now, there is talk with Tank Davis that Vasily Lomachenko may be next, and we all know that Davis is now a free agent. Lomachenko, promoted by Top Rank Bob Arum, has stated that he wants that fight. It would be for the WBA and IBF titles, lightweight titles, 135-pound. Hopefully in October, November. So what a fight that would be. You've also probably got Shakur Stevenson out there as well. He's sort of been thrown in the mix as well. But I think Lomachenko Davis makes the most sense at 135. So let's hope that Top Rank can get that fight done. Big news as well in the last 12 hours or so here in Australia. Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney has been ruled a no contest. Ryan Garcia, the positive drug test, the PED test, or the rulings have came back, and it looks like he's been suspended for 1 year. Now, he has jumped the gun already and said that he has retired. I probably doubt that's the case, to be honest, but I think after 12 months he will come back. But he put it on social media pretty much straight away that he was officially retired. Surprisingly, as I said earlier, Devin Haney has also announced he'll have a year off, so maybe will the guys both have a year off and then come back and fight each other? Who knows? But the other sanctions on Ryan Garcia was that he had $1.1 million of his purse forfeited and also got a $10,000 fine. So I'm not quite sure how the $10,000 fine comes into it. He's just had $1.1 million forfeited from his purse, and they're going to hit him with a $10,000 fine on top of it. Probably doesn't really, I think, hit home as much as that $1.1 million. And don't forget, too, he was also fined $600,000 that he had to give to Devin Haney for missing weight for that title fight. So not quite sure what happens from here. Devin Haney has, after initially really getting stuck into Ryan Garcia about the whole thing and wanting the fight changed to a disqualification. So it was actually a win for Devin Haney. I think he's accepted that it is just going to be a no contest. The thing is, he does retain his unbeaten record, but there will be that blemish beside it with the no contest. And I think, all things aside, I think at least as the fans go, that will be still regarded as a loss. But he's since retracted his comments a little bit in the hours after that and has said that once the suspension is up, that he would like to run it back with Ryan Garcia and set the records straight. The interesting thing with it all, I would think, is that Mario Barrios has been elevated to the WBC full 147-pound champion. I wouldn't be surprised if Devin Haney does take that year off, or maybe 9 months, whatever it might be, and then fights Mario Barrios for that WBC 147-pound title. Maybe Barrios might have a voluntary defense in the meantime, but if Haney goes up and wins that belt, he'll be sitting there ready for Ryan Garcia in the rematch when that suspension is up at 147. So I think there's still a little bit to play out with the Ryan Garcia Devin Haney situation, but we won't know until another 12 months' time at this stage. And don't forget, there could also be appeals. There could be all sorts of things that go on. Maybe it's legal action from Ryan Garcia. I don't know, but I've just got a feeling there's another chapter or two to be written into this saga before we get to the end of it. But at the end of the day, let's just hope we don't see the end of Ryan Garcia. I want to see him back, regardless of his being a loose cannon. I think the sport's better off with him in it. And let's hope he does. Even if it is that 12-month layoff, he takes it, gets himself right, and comes back and maybe gets that Haney fight or Boots Ennis at 147, whoever it might be. Some more world news. Chris Billum-Smith had a 12-round decision over Richard Riapor for the WBO Cruiserweight title. The scores there 116, 111, 115, 112 times 2. Interesting news on the Canelo Alvarez front. Now, the scheduled IBF purse bids for his fight with William Scull. Now, if you don't know who William Scull is, join the club. Fringe contender. Well, I'm going to say fringe contender. He's actually the number 1 challenger for the IBF belt, and I have no idea who he is. I've never seen him fight. He is a Cuban that's based in Germany. I have done a little bit more research on this. Has got an okay record, hasn't been anyone of note, and does not deserve the number 1 ranking in the IBF. But the IBF did say to Canelo, you must fight William Scull next or go to purse bids. That has been scrapped now. Apparently, they have come to an understanding. Now, we're not quite sure whether this means they're going to have negotiations as far as fighting each other, or there is a deal on the side that says that Canelo has maybe offered William Scull step aside money or something like that. That would probably, to me, seem the most logical explanation. Would that Canelo has maybe said to Scull, look, I'm going to fight. I think it's going to be Belunga, in my opinion. And maybe I will sneak in a voluntary defence, or in this case, a mandatory defence against William Scull, maybe in December or January or something like that. Or maybe he says, look, let me get past Belunga and then maybe Benavides in May, and then you'll be the next cab off the rank. But that is a long way down the track. It's over, well, it'll be well over 12 months. So I doubt William Scull will go for that. I'm sure he'll take the step aside money, but it's interesting to see what will happen. Surely Canelo Alvarez is not going to fight William Scull unless it's in a Yildirim type of situation where he did, was about 3 or 4 years ago, snuck in that defence. I think Rocky Fielding was the same, where he snuck in a fight with him in December or whatever it was of those years in between his September and May fights. But yeah, geez, I do hope we don't get the Scull fight. I think there's much bigger fights out there for Canelo than William Scull. Looks like Sebastian Fundora and Errol Spence will fight in October in Dallas at the Cowboys Stadium. Fundora was originally put on the sidelines from his team. It looked like it was going to be till early next year, but obviously that's changed because now it will be Errol Spence Jr., most likely for the WBC 154-pound title. Looks like that WBO belt will be vacated and will be on the line when Terence Crawford fights Israel Madrimov in August. So it's all starting to unfold. You've got Tim Tszyu also, of course, on the sidelines as well. I'm sure he'll make a return at the end of the year and throw himself into the mix as well. But all those belts are all up in the air at the moment. Most of the elite 154-pounders have got fights locked in, probably apart from Tim Tszyu, but I'm sure he's chomping at the bit to get back in there as well. So some really interesting times ahead for the 154-pounders. Another fight that's just been announced, Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, who hasn't fought for about 18 months. He will be returning on July 12 in Nicaragua. That's where he's from. He will fight Robert Barrera over 10 rounds at junior flyweight. Gonzalez 51-4, Barrera 27-5. Has fought for a world title in the past, Barrera, so I'm sure he'll be a good test for Gonzalez. But I think Chocolatito making one last run at the belts, or a belt, and that will be over 10 rounds in his native Nicaragua. And one last thing for in the WBO 130-pound division. Emmanuel Navarrete and Oscar Valdez has been mandated by the WBO to fight a rematch. Of course, they fought last August, I think it was, and Navarrete won that fight 119-109, 118-110, and 116-112. So Valdez, of course, won the interim title with that stoppage of Liam Wilson. Navarrete was unsuccessful for the WBO lightweight title. So now he's obviously decided to go back down to 130, and we'll get Navarrete Valdez 2. So interesting to see what pans out in that fight. I would still probably back Navarrete to win that fight. I think he won the first fight conclusively, so I'm not sure whether you could make a case that the rematch is going to be any difference. But end of the day, it's another big fight for the Mexican fans. And I'm sure the arena down in Glendale, Arizona, will be chockers for that fight if and when they do fight. So that's about it for the weekly roundup this week, guys. Hope you have a great weekend watching the boxing, and we'll catch you next week.